Hello viewers, welcome to a series of lectures on chemical bonding. This pertains to Unit 3 of CH 101 course of UGC model curriculum. In this session today, we will briefly touch upon the introductory aspects of chemical bonding and then we will take up the classical theories of chemical bonding. The session is planned as follows, that is, to begin with, we will briefly introduce to the concept of chemical bonding, what do we mean by this and all. Then thereafter, we will talk about chemical bonding in terms of a historical perspective. We will try to see how did this concept of chemical bonding came into being as a matter of historical development. Thereafter, we will take up the classical theories of chemical bonding, which probably you may have come across at some stage. And then thereafter, we will see that what are the limitations of these classical theories. Having done that, we will sum up what we do in today's session. Now, let us make a beginning by understanding that all matter which exists around us, that actually exists primarily in the combined state. Let us take some examples here. First and foremost, hydrogen, which comprises over 90% of the universe, because that means all interstellar objects and things like that, they constitute a lot of hydrogen is there on that, and hydrogen per se exists as a molecular hydrogen, H2. Similarly, if you look at the atmosphere of our planet Earth, we find that nitrogen and oxygen, which constitutes more than 99% of our atmosphere, exist as molecules, that is nitrogen, that is N2 and O2. Further, if we go into the earth crust, if you look at the composition of this, we find that more than 99% of the constituents of earth crust are compounds. That means they are made up of the molecules. That means matter primarily exists in the combined state. Now, if that be so, it raises certain questions like, why do atoms combine to give molecules? Why can't they stay all alone? And then further, if they do combine, what are the forces that bind the atoms together? That is, what are the things which hold them together? And then further going up, probably we can even ask the question like, what are different ways in which the atoms can combine? Is there only one unique way or there are more possibilities? The answers to all these questions form the basic concepts of chemical bonding, and that is what you are going to take up in this course in the duration of a certain number of lectures from here. Now, let us try to take up a historical perspective. We will start from about 500 BC, from the times of Democritus. Now, Leucippus and Democritus, I am sure that we all know that the concept of atom was given by Democritus, as we know, but if we look into historical accounts, we find that it was Leucippus who gave this concept and Democritus was the one who formalized it. That is why, because Democritus was a student of Leucippus, and there was no scientific background over there, it is only philosophical foundations are there, and they visualize atoms to be consisting of various shapes and they contain certain kind of projections. That is just a visualization of that kind. And what probably was thought of that point of time was that atoms with some hook like projections, they latch on to one another to combine, some kind of illustration of this kind. That means there is an atom there are hooks on that which can latch together to form some kind of interaction between two species there. Other possibility could be the atoms which are of different shapes, they interlock with each other like a jigsaw puzzle and all. So, they are the initial thoughts on the way the atoms can combine to give you molecules and things like that. Going further, when you find that as time progressed, the alchemists, they thought that atoms have what is called as chemical affinities, like humans have affinities amongst each other. That means you may like someone, you may not like someone else. Okay, so there are some kind of affinities. Similarly, it was proposed by alchemists that the atoms have got chemical affinities, that is, the atoms which have a relationship of attraction or love with each other, they will combine, and the substances that hated each other will not combine. So, this is one more kind of a historical perspective on the way atoms can combine together. Now, if we go further, we find that in around the time of Newton actually visualized that there is some kind of an attractive force similar to what we know of in the this mechanical world, that is of gravity, magnetism and electricity we are familiar with. Something of this kind probably exists between the matter also, that is what probably holds the atoms together. That was thoughts from Isaac Newton. Going further, Buffon actually thought of some kind of a gravitational attraction between particles of various shapes. Let me retain the concept of different shapes from Democritus and then say that these different atoms are attracted by gravitational forces there. Atoms do get attracted, but that is not what is causing chemical bonding as we know today. Let us move further, and what you find is this is towards around 1819 or so. Berzelius, he actually speculated that there is some kind of electrostatic attraction between the atoms. That is, there are certain atoms which are positive, certain atoms are negative. So, positive and negative, the two atoms, because of their electrostatic interaction, they attract each other and they combine. And essentially, in a way, it indicated something about bonding in ionic substances, as we know, say sodium chloride. That means, this speculation of Berzelius actually gave an indication about the bonding of ionic substances. But the question raised was that how do we explain bonding in case of hydrogen atoms, which we know that it is not an ionic substance, it is a covalent substance in today's nomenclature. So, this was, but it was definitely a reasonable thought which came from Berzelius. With this some kind of a historical perspective on the way different atoms can combine together. Now, let us ask ourselves, what do we understand by a chemical bond? What is a chemical bond? You must have come across pictures of this kind, that is, these are different balls here, are the atoms here, and then there is some kind of, this is ball and stick model, the so called sticks here probably is what we visualize as a bond, or maybe a picture of this kind, we find that the two balls linked by some kind of a spring, and the spring is some kind of a representation of a bond there. Or maybe we can have a structural formula of this kind, and we find that this line here indicates a bond. These are indications, they are representations of a chemical bond, they are not a chemical bond, because we need to represent that these are various possible representations of a chemical bond. That means, our question still remains, what is a chemical bond? Let us try to understand that. Now, if I look at this picture, I am sure that this picture is familiar to you. Now, let me take two atoms here, say atom 1, atom 2, and let me take that these two atoms are far apart from each other. When the two atoms are far apart from each other, what happens is the energy of interaction between the two is 0, that is what we assume. Now, as these two atoms come closer and closer, we find that the energy of this system of two atoms put together starts decreasing. It decreases the way this graph shows here. It means these two hydrogen atoms are far apart, the energy is 0 here. As you move further down, these atoms are coming closer. When they come closer, we find that energy is lower here. When they come further down, further closer and closer, we find that they come to a certain distance at which the energy is minimum. And if we try to further close, we find that energy starts increasing. So, this distance here, that means this is the x-axis happens to be internuclear distance. So, this internuclear distance, what we now know as the bond length, that is the distance of closest approach of two atoms here. And this energy here, this decrease in energy basically is the stabilization which has come because of the interaction between two atoms. Now, if the energy of a combination of two atoms happens to be lesser than two individual atoms, we say the two atoms are bound together. That means, we can say that a chemical bond may be visualized as an effect that leads to a decrease in energy. So, that basically is one way of perceiving what a chemical bond is. What we showed in the previous slide, basically there are different representations, but a bond basically means the two atoms which individually are having certain energy, when they come closer, if the energy decreases, we say they bind. Now, suppose I take two helium atoms. Now, when the two come closer, we find that if I try to do a similar exercise and try to find out the energy as two helium atoms approach each other, we find that there is very insignificant decrease in energy, and for all practical purposes, we say that helium atoms do not combine, they are inert gases. So, what we learn from this argument here is that a chemical bond can be visualized as an effect that leads to decrease in the energy. Now, let us move further and see that there actually are two types of bonding theories, because what has happened is as the science has developed, number of theories have come to explain bonding between atoms, and all these theories can be put together into two groups there. And the first group happens to be what is called as classical theories. These classical theories basically are the ones which do not take into account the quantum mechanical behavior of the particles like atoms there. So, they are classical theories because they look at atom as a classical particle there. And the two theories which are most significant here happen to be the Causal's theory and Langmuir-Lewis theory there. And the second group of theories happens to be what are called as the modern theories, and these are the ones which are based on quantum behavior of atoms there. And these two theories which come to this class happen to be the valence bond theory and molecular orbital theory. And in today's session, we will focus attention on to the first part of it. We will come to this at a later stage. Now, if I look at the classical theories of chemical bonding, there are three important developments. Again, I am taking you back to the history here, because in order to understand what are these classical theories, a few things happened in as a function of time, and these three significant developments. The first one happens to be the discovery of electron in an atom, which I am sure that everybody knows it was done by J.J. Thomson, because prior to that atom was one single particle. Once Thomson discovered that there is an electron in an atom, that means there is some structure to atom over there. That is one significant development there. Second significant development was by Abegg, who actually kind of argued and showed that the stability of noble gases is related to their electronic configuration, because all noble gases will have certain specific kind of electronic configuration. That means there is some kind of a relationship between the electronic configuration and the noble behavior of these noble gases there. The third development is Bohr's model, which I am sure that all of us know fairly well. That is, what it presumed was that there is a nucleus in the center and there are electrons which are in the shells outside the nucleus. So, these three developments actually laid the foundation for the classical theories of chemical bonding. Now, based on these three developments there, the first attempt to explain chemical bonding was made by J.J. Thomson, and what he proposed was that the formation of a compound, or you can say the molecule, that actually involves transfer of electrons from one atom to another atom. Essentially, he was hinting at something like a formation of an ionic bond. Now, with that, after this little intervention from J.J. Thomson, two very significant things came up in 1916, and two theories came independent of each other, and both of them perceived bond formation as a process of acquiring stable electronic configuration. And we know that Abegg told us that all noble gases have got a specific stable electronic configuration. Now, the assumptions of both these theories was that the electronic configuration of noble gases is more stable. This actually was picked up from Abegg's contribution there. And the second thing is that atoms combine in such a way so as to attain these configurations or these arrangements there. That is, what these two theories says is that noble gas configuration is stable. So, the atoms will combine in such a way so that they can attain or achieve this kind of a electronic configuration there. And how does it happen? Both the theories differed on that. Okay, let us take up the first theory here, that is Lewis theory, or which actually explains the formation of a chemical bond. According to Lewis, basically noble gas configuration is attained by sharing of a pair of electrons. That means, this is because we know that noble gas configuration is stable configuration, but Lewis suggested that how does it happen that in the process of bond formation, the atoms, the constituent atoms which are forming a bond, they attain a noble gas configuration, and for that he proposed that there is some kind of a sharing of a pair of electrons between the two constituent atoms there. And further he said that the shared pair of electrons that contributes towards the stability of both the atoms. That means, suppose this is atom 1, this is atom 2, so there is one electron here, one electron here. These two electrons are shared. When these two are shared, this pair here, this shared pair of electron becomes a part and parcel of this atom as well as this one. So, it contributes to stability of both the atoms there, and this shared pair of electron represents what is called as a bond according to the Lewis theory there. Okay, let us move further, and this kind of a bond actually is called as a covalent bond. Now, let us see, to represent this kind of a development there, actually Lewis visualized atoms as some kind of cubes there. What he thought of was that this not the atoms are not visualized as cubes, atoms are represented in this kind of a representation there. what it shows here is, that is, we have a cube and there are 8 corners there. Now, say hydrogen atom or lithium, both of them have the similar representation with one dot here. This dot represents one electron there. So, we know that hydrogen atom has got one electron, that is here. Lithium electron configuration is 1s2, 2s1, that is one electron, and that is 2, 1 is the electron configuration. So, the inner 2 electrons are somewhere in between here, some kind of a kernel is there which contains the nucleus as well as the inner 2 electrons, but the valence electron here is shown over here. So, all these 8 cubes shown over here, they give you the representation of, say, hydrogen, helium, boron, carbon, and so on and so forth, and the dots here are representing the valence electrons there. So, that is the way he visualized the atoms, some kind of a representations of atoms there. Now, this actually is a page from his diary, which basically shows that this page is dated March 28, 1902. This theory came in 1916. Actually, Lewis was using these concepts, because you can see that how he has visualized atoms there, and then how has he thought of bond formation over there. Now, he was using it from 1902. He was talking to his students, talking about this kind of concepts, but he formally published it as late as in 1916 there. In this formulation, how did he explain the formation of bond? Let us look at that. A single bond can be formed by what is called as edge sharing. So, we got one cube here, one cube, say let's say this is representing, say, hydrogen atom. Now, hydrogen atom has got one electron here as a valence electron there. Then let it represent what is called as a fluorine atom. Now, fluorine atoms have got 7 valence electrons as shown on the 7 corners there, and this corner is empty here. Now, this hydrogen atom and then this fluorine atom, the two can combine by sharing an edge. So, this edge of this cube here and then this edge is shared. The two, when the two come together, we find that they have a common edge over here. Now, when they have a common edge, what you find is that this cube here, this has got now 8 electrons there, 7, the initial electrons of the fluorine atom, and then this one electron which has come from the hydrogen atom there. So, this is a kind of a noble gas configuration which is of neon here. And for hydrogen here, what you find is there are 2 electrons now, and this also acquires a configuration of helium atom. So, both of them become stable. So, that is how he represented the formation of a bond. That means, he kind of represented atoms as cubes with representative valence electrons on the corners of the cube, and single bond formation was shown as by edge sharing. The formation of a double bond could be explained on the basis of what is called as a phase sharing. So, let me say this is one oxygen atom, this is another oxygen atom here. This has got 6 electrons there, the valence electrons. This also has got 6 valence electrons there. The electrons are shown differently, one are open circles, one are closed circles, just to differentiate between the 2 atoms, otherwise they are identical. Now, what happens is, in the process of bond formation of between 2 oxygen atoms, so this phase of this atom and this phase of the second atom, the two are shared. When the two combine, what you find is that we get a structure of this kind. This is a representation of oxygen molecule, and we find that, say, for this atom here, so there are 8 electrons, these 6 initial ones, and these 2 have come from the atom number 1. For atom number 1, there are 6 are initial ones, and these 2 have come from the atom number 2. So, both of them acquire noble gas configuration. Actually, to make things simpler, Lewis went further and gave what called as a electron dot representation of elements there. And basically, these representations are very simple. They consist of the element's symbol and one dot for each valence electron. So, this picture gives me the electron dot representations of first 20 elements there. So, we say hydrogen atom. So, the symbol of hydrogen is H here and this one electron here. For helium, the symbol here and the 2 electrons, the valence electrons there. So, for carbon, there are 4 valence electrons and so on and so forth. So, that is one simple representation, and that representation actually is being used nowadays also to show the formation of a bond between different atoms there. Now, let us see how do we represent, because we know that according to Lewis, the formation of a bond actually is because of the shared pair of electrons there. The question is, how do I represent that? The representation is very, very simple. That is, suppose there is a single pair of shared electrons between two atoms that is represented by a line, and this line is referred to as a single bond. Let us take an example here. Say formation of bond between hydrogen and fluorine atoms there. So, this is a electron dot representation of hydrogen atom, that is same of the fluorine atom there. When the two combine, we find that these two electrons shown over here in a enclosure here, they are the ones which are the shared pair of electron, and this is what is constituting the chemical bond or the covalent bond between the two atoms there. And this shared pair of electron actually becomes a part of this atom as well as of this atom, and that means both of them acquire the noble gas configuration. Now, to represent this, what has been suggested by Lewis is that a single pair of shared electrons can be shown by a line here, and that is what is called as a single bond. A single pair of electron, a single bond over there. So, that is the way we represent, and that is what you are very, very familiar with. Now, suppose there are two pairs of shared electrons between any two atoms, so that is said to give a double bond, and such a double bond is represented by two lines. Let us take the example of say formation of carbon dioxide. In case of carbon dioxide, this carbon atom and this oxygen atom, they share two pairs of electrons over here. Similarly, this carbon and this oxygen also share two pairs of electrons over there. So, these two pairs of electrons are shown by double bonds over there. So, two lines represent a double bond there, and double bond in other words means sharing of two pairs of electrons there. Let us move further. Let us take up a situation where there can be three pairs of electrons which are shared, say the formation of nitrogen here. So, in case of nitrogen, what you see is that these two nitrogen atoms, they share as many as three pairs of electrons there. There are 6 electrons in this enclosure here. So, these 6 electrons or the 3 pairs are represented by 3 lines here, and this is what is called referred to as a triple bond over there. Okay. Now, this is another example here, say acetylene. In case of acetylene also, these two carbon atoms share as many as 1, 2, 3 pair of electrons there. So, they are represented by a triple bond over here. So, single bond, double bond, triple bond respectively represent a single pair, a double pair and a triple pair, or 1, 2 and 3 pairs of shared electrons there. If we just try to analyze this, I have been doing it when I am trying to talk to you, we find that in the process of bond formation, if you look closely, the elements of second period, they actually acquire 8 electrons in their valence shell. I have been showing you repeatedly that valence shell of fluorine atom. When it gets combined, there are 8 electrons in that. That is, it requires a noble gas configuration. And typically, for the second period elements, we find that there will be 8 electrons. So, this is referred to as an octet rule. Let us look at this example here. This is fluorine molecule F2. We find that, so there were 7 electrons in this, and there were 6 and 1 7 here. So, this is shared pair of electron here. So, there is single bond in between the two. But if you look at it, we find that this fluorine atom has got 8 electrons, 6 are the lone pairs here, and these two are shared paired electron. Similarly, for this also, these are the lone pairs and these two are shared pair there. So, both of them acquire 8 electrons. Similarly, this is water molecule here. So, we find that oxygen atom, which belongs to second period, has got 8 electrons there. So, happening of this kind of a thing, that is attainment of 8 electrons in the process of bond formation is referred to as octet rule. This is a very, very common observation, though there are certain exceptions to this rule, which we are not taking up at this stage, because the details are not in this particular course to be dealt with. Okay, let us move further and talk about the second approach, that is the Causal's theory. We are talking about the classical theories, and we said there are 2 classical theories, one by Lewis and other by Causal, and both of them were given in 1916. The second approach to chemical bonding, which was proposed by Causal, and this again provides another way in which the noble gas configuration can be attained. And as per Causal, we find that the stable configuration can be attained by gain or loss of electrons, and then the process for this actually involves transfer of electrons. That is, that gain or loss essentially means that something is gaining, something is losing, there is some kind of a transfer of electrons taking place. Let us take an example here. Let us take the example of a simple ionic compound, sodium chloride. Now, let us look at this. This is a representation of sodium atom. So, there are 2 8, 1. There are 11 electrons in this, and this is 2, 8, 7 electrons for chlorine atom there. So, this is divide of 1 electron from a noble gas configuration of argon. This has got an electron extra from neon. So, what can happen is there can be transfer of electrons. So, that means an electron gets transferred from a sodium atom to the chlorine atom, and as a consequence what happens is that is the way we can represent it. This is sodium atom, this is the valence electron there, and this is chlorine atom with the 7 valence electrons over there. So, this electron gets transferred to this one, and what you find is that this sodium now is divide of 1 electron. So, this becomes sodium ion, this loses 1 electron, and chlorine atom which gains 1 electron becomes a chloride ion there. So, they become ionic species there, and this ionic species, this is sodium ion, this is chloride ion. Since they are charged species, they attract each other. When they attract each other, they combine together to give the ionic compound or the crystalline the ionic solid over there. So, that is the way we can visualize the formation of ionic compounds. Lewis theory talked about the covalent molecules. Here we are talking about the ionic compounds over there. Okay. Now, let us move further and see that what are the limitations of these theories. We have seen that there are two classical theories, both of them came together and talked about one type of molecules, that is Lewis theory pertains to the covalent molecules, whereas Causal's theory explains the formation of ionic compounds there. And both the theories are successful in their own domains, but they have got certain limitations. Let us look at those limitations there. The Causal's theory actually fails in case of formation of oxygen molecule. Let us see that. Now, we are trying to show the formation of oxygen molecule from two oxygen atoms by transfer of electrons. So, if the molecule of oxygen is to form by Causal's theory, that means by transfer of electrons. So, for this to achieve 8 electrons here, so this must lose 2 electrons there. That means it must transfer 2 electrons, this oxygen atom must transfer 2 electrons from itself to the other atom there. And in the process what you get is, we get O2 plus ion and O2 minus ion, and this could be one representation of oxygen molecule, but we find that there is no reason to expect that two oxygen atoms which are identical, one of them has a tendency to lose electron, whereas other has a tendency to gain electron. This is not kind of visualizable. Okay. So, that actually goes to say that the Causal's theory fails to explain bonding in case of oxygen molecule. Okay. Now, let us move further and look at what does Lewis theory tell us. We know that Lewis theory was good enough to explain formation of oxygen molecule by sharing of two pairs of electrons. We showed that earlier. That means this drawback of Causal's theory, which was not able to explain formation of oxygen molecule, was kind of overcome by Lewis theory there. It does explain formation of oxygen molecule fairly well, but this also has a limitation. The limitation is that how do I represent the formation of a triple bond? Because formation of single bond I can do edge sharing, double bond I can do phase sharing. For triple bond there is no possibility. So, Lewis theory fails to show that how do I kind of demonstrate the formation of a triple bond in terms of Lewis representation of atoms in terms of cubes and all. Now, in addition to these limitations, one each for the two theories, we find that both the theories put together do not say anything about the shape of the molecules. It just tells the formation of bond, either it is transfer or sharing of electron, but what is the shape of the resulting molecule? Because we know that molecules have a geometry, a shape. It does not say anything about that, and that actually will be taking up in the next session there. Okay. Now, let us sum up what we have done today. What we have done today is, we started by introducing the concept of chemical bonding as a process associated with the decrease in the energy of the system over there. That is the first thing we did, and then thereafter we gave a historical perspective of the developments in the area of chemical bonding. Having done that, we moved on to discussing two classical theories of chemical bonding, that is Lewis theory of a formation of a covalent bond and Causal's theory for the formation of ionic bond. And then we discussed the limitations of these two theories there, and made a case that we need to move further to explain, to invoke some new theory to explain the shapes of the molecules there, which we will be taking up in the next session in terms of what is called as VSEPR theory. Thank you.